So I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker today, Joakim Andersson, the president of GKN Aerospace Systems. So if we could just please give a warm welcome. Thank you for coming. Be careful. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Let's see if we have some sound here. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone, for allowing me to welcome you to today, a sunny and beautiful Sweden, right? And Trollhattan. And participate once again in this very, very important topic. I'm Joakim Andersson. As Lisa said, I'm the president of engines within GKN Aerospace. Been that in this position for almost, 7+ years now. I'm an engine guy since birth. It feels like. No, but I started after school, military stuff and in engines. Starting as a manufacturing engineering, that's the background. What's the kind of? I'm the guy that you looked on the video before that says, and then you just need to make sure manufacturing do what design have said that you need to do. That's where I started my career. Also a little bit just who I am. I spent the rest of my career moving through operations side into operational leadership, from the manufacturing engineering into business development and then product development. So more into the earlier phase and run a lot of the product development organization to develop new products and programs. And then into more general management perspective. On the theoretical side, very analytic, you know how it is. Technical guy, like numbers, like analytics, like data. I'm a master black belt. You have the technical side, the statistics side of Six Sigma with me. I had the MBA side that you need to take after a while to making sure also the financial numbers work with other numbers. So that's a little bit of me. What's very unusual sometimes is that being that kind of person, I did study a lot of psychology. So be careful. No. The reason for that, and now I'm not going to uphold you with all this boring stuff too long, but the reason for that is a little bit what I think I'm going to talk to you about. Being this kind of very probably typical person in engineering and engine business, I concluded that I don't understand what people don't understand. It's just logic, right? So I actually went back to school a little bit and tried to figure out the brain. I didn't figure it out, I think, but it helps me a little bit over the career to make sure that we understand one thing, and that is what I want to send with you, and I think it's very, very important what Zero Defect and this journey and what you've done, which I think, by the way, over the last number of years has been tremendously important, is we can write specifications to death. But in the end of the day, you need to get to the heart. And you need to get into the people's heart of understanding why we're doing stuff. Why is this important? Before you get there, there's always different reasons why you don't really need to follow it and why you can find your ways around it. So maybe a little bit of that as an introduction for you of what I stand for and what we stand for, what we're trying to do as part of what you're doing, is to making sure that you take that with you, that it doesn't matter how much you write, you can never capture everything. So in the end, you need to go back to the intent, and you need to go back to understand and making sure, do people understand why we're doing it and the intent of what we're doing? And sometimes I reflect on this, being also, as I told you, working in business development. and making deals. You go back in history and you look at how many pages was the original deal you made with someone. It's kind of one page. You know, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what you're going to pay. You do that, and after a while, you look at how does agreement develop. You know, many of your suppliers or customers, how many weeks of reviews with the legal team and everyone else do you need to go to make an agreement today, and how many pages? What is that based on? Why does it turn historically from one page and very clear? The first order we have, if you have the opportunity to see, the first order we have to create this company more than 90 years ago, very similar to many of the other OEMs. We got an order from the state, build engines. It kind of says, build this amount of engines, and we're going to pay you. Today, it's hundreds and hundreds of pages, right? The reason why that happens is you're trying to write for every circumstance that could happen. Reduce risk. It's all based, this happens, so let's write a chapter to describe if that happened again, this is what we're going to deal with it, right? So it just grows and grows and grows. You need to be careful. That's my message to you guys. It doesn't matter if it's in quality standards or if you're making a deal with a supplier or a customer or anyone else, that you don't lose yourself in the amount of pages. That's something I would like to send with you in the context of what we're trying to do and what you are trying to do. That video that we just played, loved it. Simple, right? The thing in that is the content of what we're trying to achieve is to making sure there is alignment between ability and requirement. So what is zero defect? We asked the question, it's like, can't you say a little, why is zero defect important? Well, I start almost every time I talk to organizations these days, to my team, about what are we doing, why are we doing what we're doing? So lift it one level. My job, probably your jobs as well, if I would push, even if you don't work for me, would be, it says, your job is to create value. That's what you get paid for if you didn't know. It's a little bit sarcastic, right? But that's what's expected of me. That's what's expected of you, to create value. For value for whom? We usually say 3, right? Always use the 3. Create value for your shareholders, your owners, your customers, and your employees. That's my job. And I would argue that's your job. And we need to look ourselves from that perspective in the mirrors. That are we creating value? Because in the long term, if you don't create value for all of those 3, you will be in trouble. If you don't create value for your employees, what happens? You know what happens. They leave you. And also you will have a hard time recruit your reputations, stuff like that. Because you live based on your knowledge and the people and what you have, right? If you don't create value for your customer, what happens then? We'll have a very hard time winning the next bid. And very hard time actually getting the next orders and cash in. So and finally, what happens if you don't create value for your shareholders? Depending on how the structure of your company is, if you're your own shareholder, if you're privately owned, or whatever it is, the reality is you don't get more investments. They don't invest in you. They invest in someone else. That's how simple my life is. That's how simple, I guess, all of our lives is. We just need to talk about those 3 things sometimes. So where does this come in this discussion about value creation? Very simple for me. This is a real foundation of creating value for those three. Because what is the learning after 30 years or so in this business? What's the most important factor? Not most, I push it to say this most important factor then. There's so many variables and stuff that people talk about. But one of the absolute most powerful thing to know that I create and know in advance that I create value is to be able to predict. It's the biggest issue we all have today, right? But predictability is worth its name in gold. If I can be certain level of certainty of what my cash generation will be and my return is going to be to the shareholders based on what I'm going to do, it will be a much easier life to making sure that what you say is what you deliver and what you're going to do, right? And that based on actually the predictability. I wonder when you go back to your business and stuff, what's your forecast accuracy on your cash? What's your forecast accuracy on your sales number? What's your forecast actually on your return of your investments, as you said? Right? So that's the shareholder side of the things. Really, really important, because if you start to wiggle around that, you say something and you do something completely different, you all follow what happened in the stock market then, and the valuation, and the reputation, and Joakim got a new job together with others. So that's really important with predictability. Predictability to the employees is also important, right? They need to know what we stand for, no surprises next week, right? The organization doesn't change all the time. Showing up in the morning and said, oh, okay, no, you're sitting in that building today, or anything, the basics of not changing the world every day. You know that you're going to get paid in the end of the month would be good. And stuff like that. People actually cares about those things, right? So predictability is important. So the zero defect for me, coming to that in the end, when you talk now on the value chain of the product, knowing what we're going to get out when we start is really, really important. Telling you more a little bit about storytelling, about why this is important. One of my job I had in my career, actually it's kind of the green part, the fan area of that engine you see back there. We don't use the different brands, right? We don't talk who's the OEMs and stuff, but it's someone engine that is on a 787 Dreamliner. I ran a shop that was making all these fan cases. I started that job and I came there, and I spent half of my time trying to sit in on the calls with customers and talking about when I think I'm going to deliver the parts. The amount of time you can do other things and what you want to develop the organization to is that you need to spend so much time reactive discussion about, because my predictability of what I'm going to deliver was poor. You peel the onion and it's pretty simple. You can argue different. Why am I poor in predictability of when I deliver? Honestly, it's almost because of one thing. We don't know if the part comes out correct. In the end of the inspection and some of the stuff in the end, do we have some issues we need to take care of? More analysis? Do we need to go back to the customers? Do we need to do? Because the other elements, people can say the predictability is really bad because I don't know if I get the forging in or if I get materials in, or if I get, yes, there's that element. But to be honest with you, that element you actually know a little bit before you're actually going to ship it. So we can be open and discuss. The reason I tell that story is that we decided very early to go try to go on that zero defect journey, and really, really working hard on eliminate non-conformance issues. It takes time, is my only reflection. Much more time than you think, and that I want. I'm not a very patient guy sometimes. You can ask some of my colleagues here. But when you've done it, it's amazing. That's the best feeling. All of a sudden, maybe it took us a year and a half of different things, and some of these parts afterwards, you almost don't know what to do with your time. Because you're you're predictable. I know how many we're going to ship, right? It's like, the tier 1 meetings and daily management is not, you know what you're going to ship. And the customer knows they can trust what you're going to ship, right? That creates a completely different element. We have tried to go through this journey on parts after part after part, and the reality is take time. But it's doable. I'll tell you it's doable. We then, in the next generation of product development that I was part of, we are now doing some of the most advanced fabrications you can find for the newest engines you can fly. They are at rate right now, I think last month we did 70 of some of the most advanced fabrications with absolutely zero non-conformances. People would say it's impossible. It's not impossible. The work is hard. The advanced work in the beginning is hard. But we get paid back multiple times right now in that we know that we can get parts out. So I'll send you one thing with you. You need some good cases. You need to show some good, get some parts. And probably you already all through this, but this is my story. You need something in your backpack of saying, you remember this part, how bad it was, we're going to do this. As an old manufacturing guy and manufacturing engineering guy, now it's going to be nerdy, but as an ANSI programming you do and process control, all of you are familiar with this kind of stuff and you love that, right? Manufacturing. We actually invented a mental thing, behavior thing. We said 0 M0s. So if you're coding or you're a programmer, every time you code an M0, right, the program stops. Your ANSI program stops and you need to do something. It's a manual intervention. It's a changing a tool. You're doing different things. 0 M0s. Just mentally getting into all our programmers and engineers and says, you need to find a way, no intervention. 0 M0s. We clocked and we printed how many minutes moving to hours the program could go with no interventions. It's just too mentally driving. Why did we do that? Because the way you had to do that is to be much more robust. Right? We invented some small fans. The program guys who come in, things you never think about on this case. A small in the tool chamber, instead of a cutting tool, it picked up a small fan and go into the part and blowing chips out and blowing cooling out, going back and take the tool back in. Why? No intervention. Robust. Predictability. It's not what we're trained for as an engineer to take a fan and blow stuff. All just pushing. What do you need to do to making sure that you can predict your outcome? So, sounds great, right? There is a problem. After all, I did all my speech here but there is a problem that I find the older I get on this. And it is the risk that this mentality and what I'm saying comes with the backside of not enough development. Can you see that? The more we write, the more we say, you need to be CPK 1.33 and nothing is going to happen and predictability. What does that mean? Pushing the boundaries is really hard. Right? We're born with pushing boundaries. It's one of the problems we have with every new engine. Let me not talk about all the new engines right now and all the stuff, but we can never stop develop. We can never stop pushing the boundaries. So now the question for you to discuss later on during these 2 days, how do we combine these two? How do we making sure that we don't stand still? How do we make sure we always get better, performance get better, leading to sustainable environmental solutions and everything else we're doing, emissions and how do we make sure this works, right? Pushing the envelope on everything we do, at the same time knowing that what we do is predictable. Yeah, I don't have the answer, but this is the trick that making sure that I started saying I am embrace and I support everything you guys have done and what you're standing for and how we drive this through. We just need to make sure we don't create a stoppage while we're doing it. My take on it, what we're trying to do, is to making sure we separate the two. Configuration control. Project management. So you are in an area right now, if you go across the board, across the street, you will be in our technology center. One of the technology centers we have. What we are trying to do is to making sure we can push boundaries and test elements and even do first series of X number of parts outside of where the predictability need to be. Don't gamble in the production flow. It's a no-no. If you want to try a new tool, you want to try a new material, you want to try a new weld method, you want to do different things, we do it in our technology centers. What we're trying to do, we're not perfect, absolutely. What we're trying to do is to mirror some of the equipments we have in the production in their technology centers. What we're trying to do is to making sure we do some first run of different things. What we're trying to do is to get our operations value stream leadership teams into our technology center and says, this is the problem we have, this is where we want to go, and this is what we want to do. Give them some task. We're also trying to making sure that we have a float of people moving around. That is probably the hardest because it shows actually after a while, theoretically from me it was perfect. Make sure people moving around and you can be in different life cycles and you understand the whole life cycle. It showed themselves that people are different. Some people doesn't really want to be in certain area, are not the personality to be in some area of the life cycle. So that was a little bit of the pushing the limit or controlling. But try to drive technology and pushing boundaries. We need all of you. If I talk for all of us, we all need all of us to push boundaries. Continue to push boundaries. But let's not push the boundaries in our daily operational stuff that is released. The last thing we want to happen is that we and all our families and everyone around there outside is going to be afraid to go on an airplane. The statistics again, the old Six Sigma guy coming back, says that our quality signature and our statistics on how many in-flight shutdowns and whatever we're going to call, it's absolutely phenomenal, much better today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's no problem to fly with 2 engines over the Atlantic Ocean, statistically. The risk for flying with 2 engines today is significantly smaller than it was with 4 engines for 20 years or 25 years ago, right? So that's the result of what we're doing together. Wrapping this up, really happy to be able to speak to you and to be the one welcome you to Trollhattan, Sweden, and GKN Aerospace. Continue to push on the regulations and the specifications and the help. And I think something Lisa said in the end. We're here, what did you say, Lisa? We're here to help, not just putting requirements. Yes. I think that's a really, really important statement, because putting requirements is easy. Making sure everyone is believing in it and taking it to heart. And you usually do that by training people, good examples. Just by seeing all these different companies, sometimes being competitors, sometimes having different views, being in the same room, driving for the same outcome, for me is absolutely phenomenal. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was really nice, inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.